You've built walls around your truth and called them strength. You mistake resistance for power, pride for identity, and silence for control. But beneath that armor, your mind trembles. You hear it at night, the whisper that says, "You are not free." Carl Jung once warned that what you resist will not fade. It will grow teeth and wait in the dark. Every time you deny your fault, every time you tighten your jaw and say, "I'm fine," something inside rots a little more. The stubborn mind doesn't protect you, it imprisons you. You have become the warden of your own suffering. But here's the haunting truth. The walls you built to survive are now killing what's left of your evolution. You can't heal while pretending you don't need healing. Look into the mirror of your own resistance. Do you see the cracks forming? That's your real self trying to breathe. Comment this phrase now. I choose awareness over resistance. Say it, write it, and let your pride hear it. Because tonight, your confrontation begins. Number 1, the anatomy of stubbornness. You tell yourself you stand firm because you know who you are, but deep down you resist because you fear what you might discover if you ever changed. The stubborn mind is not solid. It's brittle glass, disguised as steel. Carl Jung called this the tyranny of the ego, the fragile monarch that rules your thoughts and calls its cage a kingdom. You've mistaken rigidity for identity, mistaking defiance for dignity. You cling to your opinions because they keep you from the unbearable truth that you might be wrong. But every refusal to bend is another fracture forming beneath the surface. Stubbornness isn't strength. It's paralysis disguised as pride. It is the mind's desperate attempt to freeze time so it never has to face evolution. You defend your beliefs like sacred relics, forgetting they were built by a frightened child who once needed to be right just to feel safe. Jung wrote that what you do not make conscious will rule you from the shadows, and you call that destiny. The truth is cruel. Every time you shut the door to reflection, you lock yourself in with your wounds. Your ego whispers that surrender is weakness, but awareness is the only act of courage left. Break your certainty, shatter your narratives. Let the unknown humiliate your arrogance until humility becomes wisdom. Comment this phrase if you understand. My awareness is stronger than my pride, because the anatomy of stubbornness is simple. It's the refusal to evolve disguised as the illusion of control. And until you confront that illusion, it will continue to whisper in your name. Number 2, the birth of the ego fortress. It begins quietly, not with rebellion, but with fear. The moment you felt small, judged, or unseen, your mind began to build walls. Each wall was made of justification, denial, and control. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask you wear to survive the unbearable exposure of your true self. You learn to hide behind confidence, intellect, and logic, convincing yourself that control equals safety. But every stone you placed around your heart was laid by fear's trembling hand. The ego was born not as a guardian, but as a frightened child pretending to be a king. You tell yourself you don't care, that nothing touches you. But you care more than anyone. The fortress you built to protect yourself now keeps you imprisoned within your own narrative. You mistake detachment for peace, but your silence is just armor. Your composure is camouflage. Jung taught that the ego's greatest trick is convincing you that surrender means death, when in truth, it is rebirth. Your fortress doesn't defend your soul, it suffocates it. You've barricaded yourself against truth so thoroughly that even love now feels like intrusion. The walls grow thicker, the air colder, and the self, your real self, fades beneath layers of intellect and pride. You cannot see the stars anymore because you no longer trust the night. You live inside a simulation of strength, mistaking numbness for resilience. But somewhere deep within, the shadow presses its hands against the walls, whispering that none of this is real. You built this fortress from pain, but you keep it standing with fear. To break it will feel like dying, because part of you must. Comment this phrase now. I release what I built from fear. Say it like a vow to the cracks in your own foundation, because until you do, you will keep mistaking your cage for your castle. Number 3. The shadow's silent rebellion. You think the things you've buried are gone. They're not. They're alive, breathing beneath your consciousness, waiting. Every thought you suppress becomes a ghost that lingers in your behavior. Every emotion you refuse to feel mutates into a symptom, a projection, a quiet vengeance. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Everything you reject, everything you shame, everything you pretend isn't you. You think you've outsmarted your darkness, but the unconscious always collects its debt. It doesn't scream, it sabotages. It turns your relationships into mirrors. It makes you despise in others what you deny in yourself. That irritation you feel when someone challenges you, that's your shadow waving from the depths. The stubborn mind calls it principle, but it's really defense. You punish yourself through repetition. The same arguments, the same failures, the same quiet sense of being haunted by something you can't name. The shadow doesn't hate you, it wants to be seen, but your ego keeps silencing it, terrified that acknowledgement equals defeat. Jung warned that the one who looks outside dreams, the one who looks inside awakens. You've been dreaming for too long, and now the dream is turning against you. The rebellion begins with whispers, intrusive thoughts, strange guilt, unexplained sadness. You fight them like enemies, not realizing they are your exiled selves returning home. The shadow will wait centuries for your attention. It will burn through your peace until you face it. There's no escape from what you are. There is only integration. The ones who embrace their darkness become whole. The ones who deny it rot behind smiles. You are standing on the edge of your own reflection, trembling, but you must jump. Comment this phrase if you understand. I face the shadow without fear. Say it to remind yourself that awareness is the light the darkness fears most. Because what you resist will not die. It will become you. And if you do not confront it, it will control you, silently, completely. Number 4. The mirror of pain. Every time you suffer, the universe holds up a mirror, and yet you look away. You call it bad luck, betrayal, injustice, but behind every wound hides a reflection of the self you refuse to meet. Pain isn't punishment. It's feedback. It is your unconscious speaking in a language sharper than words. Carl Jung said that the things that disturb us most in others are the things we have yet to confront within ourselves. That is the mirror of pain. Merciless, honest, sacred. You run from it, drown it in noise, numb it with distractions, but it follows. It follows because it is you. The people who hurt you are not always villains. Sometimes they are messengers carrying fragments of your shadow, showing you what you need to reclaim. You call them enemies, but they are lessons wearing human faces. Your pain has been trying to save you. Every heartbreak, every humiliation, every failure, each one chiseling at the armor of your ego. The mirror does not lie. It reflects the fear behind your pride, the fragility beneath your anger. The stubborn mind breaks under reflection because it cannot bear to see itself. But those who dare to look, they evolve. You've blamed the world long enough. Now look closer. The mirror waits in silence. It will show you everything, your beauty, your darkness, your unfinished becoming. The pain you feel is the bridge back to your authenticity. It's the cost of awakening. When you stop resisting it, it transforms. Comment this phrase if you're ready. My pain is my teacher. Whisper it like a confession to the part of you still hiding behind your scars. Because until you stop running from the mirror, every reflection will remain a wound, and every wound will be another plea from the soul asking to be seen. Number 5, the collapse of control. You've held the reins so tightly that your hands bleed, yet the horse still drags you through chaos. Control was never mastery. It was fear wearing discipline's mask. Carl Jung wrote that every structure built on denial must one day decay, and your fortress is cracking. You feel it in the pauses between thoughts, that tremor, that quiet panic. The persona you've curated, the certainty you display, begins to flicker like a dying light. You try to fix it, adjust it, explain it. But the more you tighten your grip, the more everything slips through. The mind rebels against its own tyranny. You mistake this collapse for failure, but it is liberation disguised as breakdown. Control was the illusion that kept you safe from mystery, from surrender, from the vastness of what you truly are. Now the scaffolding falls, plans shatter, identities dissolve, and you finally meet the silence you've been avoiding. The stubborn mind cannot survive this silence because silence exposes the fraud of its authority. You are not losing control. You are losing the lie of control. The ego screams as it drowns because it knows that when it dies, something larger wakes. Let it die. Let the false self collapse under its own weight. Breathe through the wreckage until the ashes settle. You will not find peace in holding on, only in letting go completely. Jung said that the greatest tragedy is to live unaware of the self. The greatest freedom is to realize you were never the controller, only the witness. Comment this phrase if you can feel it. I surrender the illusion of control. Whisper it like a eulogy for your old self. Because only when the emperor of the ego falls can the kingdom of consciousness rise. Number 6, the descent into shadow. There comes a night when the light you worship refuses to answer, and the silence begins to breathe. You feel it, that slow unraveling beneath your ribs, the quiet collapse of everything you thought was you. This is not madness, this is initiation. Carl Jung called it the confrontation with the shadow, the descent every soul must take to be reborn whole. You've spent years polishing your surface, worshiping certainty, hiding your chaos behind intellect and virtue. But the darkness has patience. It waits until you're too tired to pretend. And now it opens its jaws. You descend, not down, but inward. The air grows thick with memory. Faces appear, voices whisper. Every buried emotion returns like an exile demanding recognition. You tremble because you realize these ghosts are yours. Every hatred, every envy, every suppressed desire, they belong to you. The ego calls them evil. Jung called them unrealized power. Your resistance burns away under the weight of their gaze. You want to escape, but there is nowhere left to climb, only the abyss of truth. In this darkness, nothing obeys your control. You are stripped, disarmed, naked before the unconscious. Yet here, finally, the war ends. The shadow doesn't want your destruction. It wants your acknowledgement. It kneels before you, holding the pieces you abandoned. You weep not from fear, but from recognition, the realization that you have been fighting yourself all along. The descent feels endless, but within it, a new pulse begins. Integration, the slow merging of light and dark. Jung wrote that no tree can reach heaven unless its roots reach hell. Now you understand. Comment this phrase if you feel it rising within you. I walk through my darkness with awareness, because to descend is to remember. To remember is to reclaim, and to reclaim is to become whole. Number 7, the awakening of self-realization. You emerge from the dark not as who you were, but as what you have become. The silence no longer feels hostile. It breathes with you. Something ancient stirs beneath the skin, awareness, unflinching and alive. Carl Jung called this the birth of the self, the moment when consciousness sees itself without distortion. You stand among the ruins of your certainty and realize the collapse was mercy. The stubborn mind that once ruled you has dissolved, and in its place rises an intelligence that does not argue, it simply is. You see that every wound was a message, every failure an initiation. The shadow is no longer your enemy, it stands beside you, calm, reconciled, whole. You feel both the sinner and the saint. both the destroyer and the healer. Opposites fused into one steady pulse. The world still moves, but it can no longer shake you. Reactions lose their teeth. Judgments lose their chains. You have become the observer, the witness behind thought. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And now you know. Truth was never a theory. It was an unveiling. The light you chased was hidden in the very darkness you feared. You can feel your awareness stretching beyond pain, beyond pride, beyond the desperate need to be understood. This is self-realization, not the end of suffering, but the mastery of its meaning. You no longer resist life, you absorb it. Comment this phrase if you recognize the shift. I awaken as awareness itself. Because awakening is not escape. It is the final acceptance that nothing ever needed is. Number 8, the rebirth of consciousness. Out of the silence comes a breath you didn't expect. Steady, clean, unfamiliar. The air tastes different because it no longer smells like fear. Something in you has died, and something vast has taken its place. This is the moment Carl Jung called individuation, the birth of the self from the ashes of the ego. You feel lighter not because the world has changed, but because you have stopped fighting its truth. Awareness flows through you like warm light through cracks in stone. You see your past not as a curse, but as the map of your becoming. Every wound was an entry point for light. The shadow no longer lurks behind you. It walks beside you, a loyal companion that once frightened you into awakening. You realize that the divine and the damned were never separate. They were fragments of the same soul trying to remember itself. You laugh, quietly, as if a burden you carried for centuries has evaporated. This is what freedom feels like. Not ecstasy, but stillness. No more war between what is and what should be. You no longer need to prove, defend, or impress. Reality doesn't threaten you anymore. It reveals you. Jung wrote that wholeness is not perfection but completion, and you finally understand. Your consciousness has become a circle. No corners to hide in, no edges to cut. Every part of you belongs. Every darkness was an invitation to light. Comment this phrase if you feel the rebirth. I am whole within my light and shadow. Because this is the moment your existence stops being a defense and becomes a declaration. The rebirth of consciousness is not a beginning. It's the recognition that you were never broken at all. Number 9. Becoming untouchable. You have faced yourself, and that is why nothing outside can destroy you now. The storms still rage, but they no longer reach your core. You have become untouchable, not because you've built new walls, but because you've dismantled the ones that made you afraid. Carl Jung wrote that the individual who integrates the shadow becomes unassailable, because he no longer projects his war onto the world. You feel that truth pulsing through you. You do not need to win arguments, prove worth, or seek validation. The noise of others has lost its gravity. You stand in the center of chaos and hear only stillness. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. The ego that once demanded attention now serves awareness. You see through manipulation, illusion, praise, and rejection with the same calm gaze. The world continues its theater, but you no longer audition. The untouchable mind doesn't escape emotion. It allows it to pass through, like wind through open hands. You are no longer the story. You are the silence that holds it. Jung called this transcendence. When consciousness stands beyond the opposites, beyond praise and blame, pleasure and pain. You no longer chase light or flee shadow. Both serve you now. Detachment is not numbness. It is mastery. You do not cling to peace. You emanate it. The stubbornness that once imprisoned you has evolved into presence, unmovable, yet alive. You have discovered a strength so quiet that the world cannot provoke it. Comment this phrase if you feel it rise within. I am untouchable in my awareness. Say it as a vow, not of defiance but of peace, because to be untouchable is not to stand above life. It is to stand within it, unbroken, undivided, awake. Number 10. The eternal observer. You have come full circle. What began as resistance ends in revelation. You no longer chase meaning, you are meaning. The stubborn mind that once screamed for control has dissolved into silence, and within that silence you find yourself watching, not reacting, not clinging, only witnessing. This is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke of the self, the awareness that holds both light and shadow without preference. You see thoughts rise and fall like waves that never touch the depth beneath. You see people speak, the world move, emotions bloom and fade, and through it all, you remain. Not cold, not detached, but vast. You realize that consciousness was never inside the body. The body was inside consciousness. You have stepped out of time, out of story, into the still eye of your own existence. Nothing can be taken from you because you no longer measure life in possession. Nothing can wound you because you no longer confuse pain with identity. You are not the storm nor the sky. You are the infinite field in which both appear. The eternal observer has no enemy, no boundary, no fear. Awareness watches awareness until there is no watcher left, only the quiet pulse of being. You understand now, enlightenment was never an escape. It was a remembering. You have not changed, you have awakened. Comment this final phrase, a seal upon your transformation. I am the eternal observer. Let it echo through the silence you've earned. And as you breathe into this stillness, remember, awareness is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of living without illusion. So if this truth reached you, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because awareness is the first act of transformation.